Baby, I'm the gamble of your life. Why you always gotta think twice? We could go at it all night till the morning till you can't even go no more.
Aaron, just what's the feel right now between you and your teammates, just the emotion that you guys have?
Well, it feels like a normal Wednesday. I don't think there's a whole lot of, over sentiment going on right now. It's the key is to keep the week as normal as possible, I think, and it feels like a Wednesday. We went out, we had a kind of a walk-through tempo, and that's what it feels like.
Aaron, have the weeks leading up to previous NFC Championship games that you've played in, have they been a little bit different? I know Matt has stressed normalcy, and you kind of mentioned it there. Have you had different experiences?
No, I feel like they've all been the same. I think there's an appreciation that there's only 4 teams left. I mean, that's pretty cool. Think about there's 28 teams on vacation right now, and we're still going. But no, you try and keep the weeks as normal as possible. We haven't ever had one of these at home, so that's the only thing that's kind of normal. We know we're traveling on Saturday.
Are they looking different with Ford and Alexander since those two guys didn't play last time?
They're both really good players. I think D had 6.5 sacks this year, but he's a very disruptive player. And Alexander was hurt, but when he played, he was a difference maker. Fast, athletic. He's obviously it seemed like he was on a play count last week, but he's a talented player.
Aaron, you said, I think it was after the game in Atlanta, that you got to find a way to get one of those championship games at home. You were obviously really close this year. What have you learned, though, about what you have to do on the road in these types of games?
Well, it just makes it a little bit harder with the crowd, obviously, and the lack of communication, the issue that presents. So, you got to be good. We've played in tough environments on the road, though. I mean, you think about all the 3 places we played. Obviously, Chicago was loud and intense, and Seattle was and is one of the toughest places to play. And obviously, Atlanta in 16 was rocking. So we expect a loud environment. There's a lot of us who played in these type of games before, which helps from experience. But we got to start faster than we did early in the season and take care of the football.
How do you keep their D line from just dominating the game?
Well, there's been some ways that people have attacked them to try and slow them down a little bit. This point in the year, you kind of expand your preparation a little bit. Not just focusing on maybe the last 4 or 5. You might dip into some of the earlier tape.
Aaron, I imagine how much getting to your second Super Bowl would mean to you, but what does it mean to you as a leader inside that locker room to have so many guys talk about what it would mean to them to help send you to your second Super Bowl?
Well, I haven't really heard a lot of that, but I do appreciate that. There is a feeling, I think, when you're younger and there's some older guys in the squad who are on the back half of their career, wanting to make them get that ring for them. I know when I was playing in the first one, I know how much it meant to Charles to get one, and Donald Driver and Ryan Pickett and Howard Green and some of the older guys we had on the squad, Chad Clifton, Scotty Wells. It was important to get that for those guys because just how much I knew it meant to them late in their career.
Aaron, what is it about their pass defense that has made them the top pass defense in the league this year?
They got a lot of first rounders who play like it. They're difference makers. They can push the pocket inside. Versatile players. Both. Armstead can play on the tackle and on the guard. Buckner is long enough to push the pocket inside. Obviously, Bosa is a really talented player, and D Ford. They just really can get after you, just rush them 4, and then they got a really nice blitz package as well that can give you some issues. I think Fred's had a fantastic season inside as a young player, and he kind of makes that thing go, I think, from an alignment standpoint and getting them in the right coverages and pressures. And then the defense behind it just plays time clock really well because they know that ball's got to come out because they're getting after the passer.
What strikes you about Sherman? We've gone up against him a lot. He's older, Achilles injury, and doesn't seem really missed a beat.
Well, he hasn't, and he bet on himself with his contract, and I saw a lot of that he hit a lot of his escalators and stuff, and I just think it's kind of funny when it all comes back around with some of those tweets that he was kind of rehashing. He's a talented player. In my opinion, never lost it. I mean, there was never a time where you're playing him where you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go after this guy. I always think you have to be smart about what routes you like to throw on him, and understand that he's one of the headiest players that has ever played that position. So you got to be real smart about the types of routes you're liking on that side of the field.
I think last time you guys played them, Alex Light played 70 snaps after Brian hurt his knee there. I'm not asking you to crap on him, but how much more comfortable are you with the depth of this line with Brian now healthy for the rematch and Jared back there too?
Yeah, I mean, I'm confident in the line. I think they've done a nice job this season. It's been important that they've pretty much stayed healthy. Obviously Brian's been out a couple times, but they've started all the games together. I feel good about our backups, Alex, Jared, and Lucas. If they need to step in, have all played and done well. Jared, has obviously played a lot of football and stepped in and did a really nice job Sunday night. But feel good about Lucas as well on any of the interior three positions if we need him.
We all know about Matt's connections with this staff. Did that affect that first game in any way, and is he handling any different this time?
I don't know. I think you probably should ask Matt about that.
Aaron, growing up in Northern California, did you ever think or dream that you would be playing against the 49ers for a trip to the Super Bowl?
I usually dreamed about playing for the 49ers as a kid, but obviously that thing passed a long time ago. But I do remember, some great games over the years between the Niners and the Packers, and a couple in this situation, I think. Right, Tom? NFC championships? Just one? Thanks. Just one.
Aaron, you mentioned Howard Green. When you look at what Moody has done with this roster, not just the free agents from the offseason, but adding Jared and adding Tyler Urban, what do you think of what he's done to kind of surround this team and you with some pretty good talented guys from outside?
Yeah, I think he's done a great job. I think he deserves a lot of credit, him and his staff. I think he would probably tell you it's not just one man. I think his staff has done a great job of finding that talent. I knew they had eyes on a number of players, and Tyler was one of them, because I was talking to Milt and John Eric the other day, just telling him what a great pickup I thought that was, and they said, yeah, we kind of had eyes on him for a while, and he's made a huge difference for us. And then to be able to get Jared, who was at our first game, in the stands, playing in the playoffs, pretty special. There's been a lot of great pickups, but I think I said this in my locker a few weeks ago. The big name ones have been fantastic, but it's the kind of the other ones that have been kind of the glue pieces. I feel like bringing Mercedes back, I think, was a super underrated move that has really helped our run game and our locker room with the leadership. Tremont, the pickup a couple years ago was important, and keeping him on the roster, how important he's been, from a leadership standpoint, from a playing standpoint, I think really important for that. Re-signing Lucas Patrick, who's been so valuable for us as a super competent backup center and backup interior guy. It's little things like that I think really make this thing go.
Aaron, a six-game winning streak. Have you felt the collective confidence of your team grow through those games, and if so, how valuable has that been to this?
Yeah, I feel like we've been playing a little bit better during the stretch. It hasn't been pretty the entire 6 games, but I feel like we've been trending in the right direction. And a lot of stuff is stuff you guys might not see. It's kind of the work weeks. It's the preparation. It's the install. It's just, I think, fine-tuning some stuff that we needed to mid-season. That's really helped us to, I think, play a little more intelligently and a little more reactive. If you look at the numbers of mental mistakes over the last 6 weeks, I think they've been significantly down And I attribute that a lot to Matt and his staff with kind of the slight changes they've made in some of the install stuff and some of the practice stuff we've been doing.
But Aaron, after that game in November, after the game, a game where you lost by 29 points, you said, you know what, I still feel good about this team, and I think we're going to see them again. And it's played out perfectly to that. What happened during that game that made you feel that confident?
We had to have one really good touchdown drive. It's just, I think you realize playing against them how good they are. And at the time, they had a 2-game lead after that game, plus obviously the tiebreaker. So just calculating things in my head, I figured, if we got to the playoffs and made a run, we'd probably have to beat them in their place at some point. And sure enough, we're back in the situation where we got to do it to get to the Super Bowl.
Speaking of things you said after that game, the Wednesday after, you said, I have to get hot when we were asking you what you need to do. I don't know if you would say that what you got was the kind of hot we expect you to be, but was there some sort of shift during these 6 games that you have won in the definition of how you do that? Or that, because you also later said, I don't have to throw 40 touchdowns a couple weeks later. So how do you assess what you've done in these 6 games, and do you feel hotter now after the way you played on Sunday?
I feel good about the stretch we've been on. I think, again, a big key to these 6 weeks were the confidence we gained kind of those first 2 games after, after that loss, and then winning those 3 division games. I just think we learned a lot about ourselves in the process of how we go about our week. I'm not going to get into significant detail on that, but I feel like the process of our Monday to Saturday improved during that time, and as a direct correlation, I feel like the mental mistakes decreased. And what that allowed us to do was play a little quicker, a little faster, and we just had less busts. I feel like we just had too many over the first 10 or 11 games, and I don't know if it's simplifying things in the install or the weekly practice, but I feel like there was a concerted effort to really get on the same page. And because of that, we had, even though it wasn't the prettiest of 6 wins, our mental focus has been a lot better those 6 weeks.
So what about you then? Because we know what hot has looked like for you in 16 and what you did, and that's not what this is.
I was hot in a couple of them. I mean, my job is different year to year, and it's about being efficient and taking care of the football and making the right checks. I mean, those are so important for us getting in the right place. And I think there's been times where I've felt super locked in, in games, and maybe not as locked in based on the week of preparation. The last 6 weeks, I've felt really locked in on the preparation, and I think that's helped us on offense to really be on the same page.
Aaron, you mentioned starting fast. How much does the script have to do with that? And is it more about just picking the plays that you really like, or is it seeing how the defense reacts to the plays that you guys pick?
I think it's both, Spoon. I think it's feeling great about certain plays early on, and then being able to react quickly to differences that we might see early on based on stuff that we may have seen on film and expected. And I think that's what Matt did a great job of on Sunday. And I know his staff really helps him with this, but the adjustments, I think we made really good in-game adjustments, especially early on as we saw some things that were a little different maybe on film than what we saw in the first couple drives. I thought Matt did a good job of adjusting there, especially in the second quarter, and getting us going. So we're going to have to do that as quickly as possible on Sunday.
Aaron, Zadarius sort of reminded us this past week that he and maybe some other players on your team were snubbed this year. Is there a sense that this team overall has been snubbed?
I'm the wrong guy to ask when it comes to that, because I don't pay a lot of attention to the outside stuff unless Tom sends it to me. which isn't that frequently. Thank you, Tom. I do know that there's been some incredible performance by our guys, and maybe they haven't got the recognition they deserve. I hope we all remember why we're doing this, though. It's to win championships, and when you win championships, everybody wins. And as someone who's won some of those individual awards, I definitely trade those for a couple more rings.
Aaron, you mentioned that pressure is a little different at times, and it's accountability within the room or the locker room, the process, I guess, as opposed to the game. Having seen this group this year, do you feel that maybe that pressure you put on yourselves in that way may keep this from creating pressure for guys maybe who haven't been here before?
Yeah, I think so. I think a team takes on the attitude of the head coach and the leaders first and foremost. And when you have a head coach and a leadership group that's pretty even-keeled, and you got great personalities within that, like a David Bakhtiari and a Zadarius Smith and a Devontae Adams, who are able to keep things loose and guys not tightening up. I think that's the most important thing, because this is the same type of game. You know, it's 60 minutes, it's 11 on 11, it's all the cliches you could imagine and insert into that sentence. The problem is when you make it bigger than it needs to be, when you try and do too much, when you try and cover for somebody else in your own mind or make up for something that you think needs made up for, that's when the mistakes happen. And, you know, I think if you look at this game, they're definitely favored by, 7.5, Tom, is that right? So they're, you know, obviously expected to hold court and win, and people know and are talking about how we played the last time. So I think if you look at pressure, the pressure is in a certain place, and we should be nice and loose.
What's a really solid defense known for, and given Matt's close relationship with him, what have you learned about him through Matt?
Well, I know Matt respects the heck out of him, and you know, I just watching on TV, I think you appreciate his passion and his love for the guys. You know, his defense is very smart defense. You know, they swarm to the football. They try and punch the ball out. They obviously have a number of, you know, high picks playing up front to get after you, but they understand how that affects the rest of the defense and how they can play certain spots and timing that may be outside of the base concept of the system, but it's a way they can play based on their great front. So they do a really good job of playing all together, front end to the back end, and coach is a really talented coach. I'm sure he'll be a head guy at some point.
Any similarities in their personalities from what you see of Salah on TV to what you know of Matt? Is there anything similar?
Yeah, I don't know. I know Matt really well. I don't know Coach Salah as well, but both passionate guys.
Aaron, we know you've thought very highly of Devontae for a long time. Is there any area of his game that you've seen him get even better this year that leads to a performance like he had last Sunday?
For him, it's just about recall. You know, I think being able to recall certain things that have happened throughout his career very quickly, and I think that's something you have to work on. It's a mental skill that you can stretch your mind in a way through visualization or memorization of certain events and plays and concepts that he can recall very quickly, because he's made certain plays throughout the year where him and I have had conversations either on the sidelines or in the locker room after the game, and he will bring up certain plays from previous games or previous years. And I don't think he's done as much of that over the years. He really hasn't. So whether he's working on that through some sort of mental training or just realizing how important that is to improving, I think that's been one part of his game that's definitely changed. And like I said after the game, you know, Jordy and I used to have conversations like that all the time in the locker room, you know, on game day and on other days of the week, you know, about certain things that happened at certain times over our careers playing together. And being able to recall those things in the moment is how you can really get on the same page. And he's made a number of plays this season that have been just plays that really show how connected we are, and I think a lot of that is due to his recall.
So Aaron, how does that help you then this week? Because I would assume that Salah is looking at last Sunday going, we can't let 17 beat us the way he played. So how does that, because when you compare a majority, that's really high praise given the connection you two have.
Well, I think the most important thing at this point is you are who you are. So you have to understand what they're going to try and do to us. And obviously taking away 17, it's got to be right near the top of the list because he's so talented. So we're going to have to find ways to get him the football still. And the best offenses that we've watched over the years, you still find a way to get the football to your go-to guy. So we got to find a way to get him the ball, and we have to have contributions from other guys in the perimeter as well, because you would expect that'll be a focal point of their defense.
Baby, I'm the gamble of your life. Why you always gotta think twice? We could go at it all night till the morning till you can't even go no more. You like it, don't even deny it.